A really important thing to consider when we are engaging in our early years practice and pedagogy is that the aim of early years is not to normalize all of our children into learning, behaving, developing, regulating, playing the same. We know that a core principle of early childhood is that all children are unique. They have their own motivations and interests, they have their own learning preferences and patterns, they will play in different ways. The ways in which they will regulate might differ. And so, when we are thinking about neurodiversity affirming practice, one of the things that we are acknowledging is if our children are different from one another, we need to have a pedagogy that accounts for the variations in learning and development. And we need to have a space in which, if a child has a lifelong developmental difference or a disability, that this is not something we need to be cautious of. It is not something that we need to reject or deny. It is not something that we should look at as, well, this child is not going to fit in and we cannot meet their needs here. Because actually, lifelong developmental differences or neurodivergence and disability is, in fact, a teacher. It enables us to enrich and diversify our practice. It's absolutely fine that we might have some apprehension around that. So, we may, for example, be educating and caring for a child who is Down syndrome for the first time, or who is non speaking, or who is autistic. So, we may have experiences developmentally that are new to us, and that apprehension is a very natural response. But actually, we also need to think about, if there is a child here that has a lifelong developmental difference or disability, what can I learn from this, and how does this contribute and enriching the environment, the pedagogy, and the practice? So, neurodivergence and disability disrupts our conventional notions of teaching and caregiving. We know that we have an education system that is built on a factory model. It's built on this idea that one size should fit all children should be measurable by the same metrics, all children need to fit in and to comply. And actually, we need to resist that. We need to reject that notion so that we can really create rich and diverse ecosystems for our children. And so, one of the things that we talk about at Diverse Pathways for Early Childhood is our neurodiversity ecosystem in early childhood. And you can download a copy of this poster on our website. And it is a really useful way of demonstrating that neurodivergence, disability, and other differences act as a teacher rather than something that is designed to limit our practice. So, the neurodiversity ecosystem recognizes that children will be different from each other, including developmentally. There will also be lots of similarities, lots of crossovers as well, but generally, the more difference you have in your space, the greater opportunity to enrich in that ecosystem. So you're creating a community where all ways of being are valid. So let's look at one example from the neurodiversity ecosystem. If all your children came into your early childhood space and every child's dominant form of communication was the use of mouth words, and they communicated through speech or through mouth words. That is how they developed their language and communication. In that case, you would always cater to children who use mouth words as part of their communication identity. But we know the reality is that there are lots of different communication identities, and you're not only going to be supporting, caring for, and educating children who use mouth words. You might, for example, have a child who is deaf and they use sign language and lip reading. You might have a child that is minimally speaking and relies on speech to sign, such as Makaton. You might have another child that is non speaking and they rely on a visual system, or they use alternative or augmentative forms of communication. You might have a child who acquires their language via Gestalt language processing. So you notice that they are acquiring their language through chunks rather than single words. They use delayed echolalia, for example, they use scripts. And so within your early childhood environment, what you have is a number of children with different communication identities, and that then enriches your practice as you begin to build up your pedagogy, your strategies, your techniques, your resources, so that your ecosystem becomes richer, so that as time passes, The more children that you care for and educate, the greater your capacity to accommodate those children. It's why I always say never just wait to meet a child with a specific developmental difference before actually planning for it. Have these conversations straight away around actually what are we doing to contribute to our ecosystem based on the knowledge we do have about all the diverse ways children can develop. And what this highlights to us is that inclusion in our early childhood environments is a process of becoming, not being. So it isn't about us being perfect as early years educators. It's not about us having all our boxes ticked on our ordinarily available provision or our universal plan and going, hey, presto, we're now inclusive. It's that active and ongoing recognition that inclusion takes time. It's always in a fluid state. It's always moving because that's how our ecosystem works. So you might want to download this poster and look at some of our other examples of diverse ways of developing and being.